that you can have evidence and proof that indeed you know how to conduct, how to identify and improve process efficiency. So that is why I said this webinar is intended for both the people who hold certificates before, but they've never really had any chance to do this in practice, and for those who really want to get started so that they can have this practice. This is your opportunity that you are going to have. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to attend this webinar. My name is Farai Langton Chwai. I'm a risk management consultant at the QHSE Group, and we are based here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. So, in this webinar now, what you're going to do, let me start off by really explaining what exactly are you expected to do by the end of this webinar. How are you going to apply the information that you're going to get? So in today's webinar, I'm going to introduce the DAMAC methodology, okay, the technique that is designed to identify and address inefficiencies in a process, which also is expected to improve the outcome and to make the improvements more predictable. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I really want to show you how this usually plays out in practice. So I'm going to show you the kind of processes that you're going to identify and what exactly is regarded as an inefficient and so on like that. So what you're going to learn today, it all starts off really like this, okay? So this is a case study and an example at Starbucks. So the first thing that happens now, what you're going to learn today, it all starts with what you call the voice of the customer. And these days now, the voice of the customer, this can be a Google review or basically a survey or feedback from the customer. So the first point now, during the define phase, you are going to have feedback from the clients. For example, here, this is having to wait so long, having to wait a long time to get a seat, okay? And then the next step now is basically to define the characteristics of the problem so that we can measure it. So as you can see, this is basically the process flow and then the customer journey. This is where we are going to identify and address these inefficiencies. Now, what exactly is called an inefficiency? An inefficient, basically, it is a defect. Anything that does not meet customer requirements or anything that makes the customer unhappy. And in this instance, the defect here or the inefficiency is basically the stage whereby the customer is looking for a seat. So this is an example of a process that that you can identify and address these inefficiencies. And then now in the analyze phase, we are going to identify the cause of the problem. That means we are going to use different techniques to determine why is it that in the second stage of the customer journey, we have a dip here. And then now in the improvement phase, we are going to implement solutions. What can we do so that we stay above this dotted line so that we can meet the customer needs and expectations and to avoid defects in this stage? And then the control phase, we are going to maintain that solution. Now, when it comes to DAMAC or Lean Six Sigma, one thing that you have to understand, especially when I'm giving you these examples, you do not have to focus rather on where this example, where this case study is coming from. What you have to focus on is a process, because the way you identify and address inefficiencies in processes, it is the same. As you can see, this is an example from Starbucks. The way we identify and address inefficiencies here is the same as the way we address inefficiencies at this bank right here. The same way we are going to address and identify inefficiencies in this rubber glove manufacturing processes, and the same way that you're going to identify inefficiencies in all of these 15 different case studies that I'm going to show you. So the first thing that I really need you to understand is that you have to learn the skill to understand the process. For example, this is a case study from Nike, okay? The way that Nike identified and addressed their inefficiencies here is the same way that we are going to do it also at the Starbucks location. So that is what I really want you to get right off the bat. It's not really about the scope or the context, but you have to focus on the process. So that is what we are going to do. And as I said, by the end of this webinar, I'm going to show you step by step with clear-cut examples and case studies on how you can identify and address these inefficiencies in any process. By the end of this webinar, I want you to become a one-trick pony. Whenever there is a process, whatever that process is for, it can be for a nuclear facility, for a laundry company, a lemonade stand, a car manufacturing company, as long as there is a process, by the end of this webinar, I'm going to give you information that is going to help you to identify and address these inefficiencies the same way as I have explained right here. So I'm also going to add this example from Starbucks, because all of you know Starbucks and you are familiar with the processes, and also Starbucks, they use very good Six Sigma processes, and this is going to really help you going on forward. Now, as part of explaining what exactly does it mean to identify and address inefficiencies in a process, this is basically the initiation and the background information that you need, because for you to have any success in using Lean Six Sigma, the DMAIC methodology, you really have to understand why, when, and how to use it, okay? So this DMAIC methodology now, the technique that is used to identify and address these process inefficiencies, is basically designed to answer these following questions in any process. So in your organization, whenever there is a process, you, by the end of the DMAIC methodology, should have addressed what does the customer define as the problem, what are the characteristics of this problem, what are the root causes, and what controls should be implemented to sustain this improvement. Again, I'm going to give you an example of how this works. So let's say we are going to start off very simple here, and we are going to take a second case study from Mr. Jack here. So if we are going to use the DMAIC methodology, what is going to happen? The first stage, we need to understand what does Mr. Jack define as the problem, okay? And this is basically the beginning of identifying and addressing inefficiencies in a process. So what does the customer define as the problem? Here, according to Mr. Jack, okay, what he addresses the problem is basically to he tend to hold up the queue when the app is logging, and he cannot find his seat at his usual outlet, and that's Starbucks. This is what the customer identifies as the problem. The second step, what you're also going to learn, is what exactly are the characteristics of this problem. So that means we are now going to translate the voice of the customer. This is the voice of the customer, these pain points, into the voice of the process. And then it is going to look like this. As you can see, this is the point where Mr. J cannot find the store, the seat at his usual outlet. And this is also the stage when the queue is holding up, when he's trying to open his application for payment. This is basically the characteristics of those problems, these items that have been listed down here. Okay, and then we have to look at what exactly are the root causes. Why is it that we are having problems with with full seats? What is causing the credit card or the payment section to be declined and so on? The root cause is why exactly are we having these defects right here. And then we are also going to determine what controls should be implemented to sustain that improvement. That means we are going to find information and improvement so that we can move from this defect, so that we can always make sure that we address the problem as an improvement. So that is, in a nutshell, what exactly you're going to do, and that is a brief description of how you can identify and address process inefficiencies. Of course, this example, it can be expanded more into more, but it really serves as a good example to show you and point you in the right direction of what do you need to do and what are you going to learn in today's webinar. So that is exactly what you do. And as you can see, the benefits, basically, it's going to be when you identify these process inefficiencies, we are basically talking about these dips right here. So some of you can be working in different industries, different companies. Within your process flow, within your customer journey, within your service realization process, you can also have these dips right here, where some stages they fail to meet the customer needs and expectations. And today I'm going to show you how can you identify those steps, and then also how you can address them. And that is what I'm going to do, and also to follow up with these case studies so that you can know. After this webinar, you can now go to the specific industry that you work in, okay? We have got case studies from the government of Houston, Texas, case studies from eBay, we have got case studies from Nike, and so on. And what you're going to see in all of these case studies here is that the way process inefficiencies are identified and addressed, it is almost the same. All what you have to do is just to understand which tools to use and which deliverables do I have to do, so that whenever you have a process with you, you can identify and address its inefficiencies. This is a practical approach to Lean Six Sigma. Now, the last concept now that I'm also going to give you before we really dive in is basically the measurement of capability. So this chart that you see here, as they say, we cannot manage or you cannot improve anything that you cannot measure. So we need actually a measurement unit for the process capability. How good is that process? Okay. So I'm also going to use this chart right here, which is called a Z table, defects per million, opportunities, and so on, to explain again the DMAIC methodology on how exactly it is used. But this time I'm also going to explain in form of numbers. So there's what you call the sigma level. Okay. This measures the capability of a process with continuous data. Okay, so this is the sigma level, and this is where the name Six Sigma comes from. And then here we have got the defects parts per million, and this basically measures capability for discrete data or non-continuous data. And also this is equivalent in yield or the satisfaction rate. So I'm also going to explain to you how usually this happens. So first of all, we are going to have the customer input, the voice of the customer. So the customer here, as you can see, it is going to start off as a Google review. And the customer here said, it's quite embarrassing when I take too much time to scroll through my cards at the counter. This is basically what you call the voice of the customer. From this voice of the customer, we are going to define the problem. And the problem here is going, at the end of the define phase, we are going to have goals and pain points. And from these pain points now, we are going to what? We are also going to link them to the process like this. All right. So when we have now during this measurement phase here, what are we going to do? We are now going to come back here and determine what is the capability of that process. So let's say this process has got a sigma level 1 or a defects parts per million or 0.690,000 defects. It means that, if we repeat this process, if it is repeated, these dips that you see here, they are going to happen 690,000 times. That is the current performance, and that is how good this process is. And in that scenario, it means that the yield satisfaction rate here is 30.85%, okay, for this process. So in the improvement phase, we are going to look for root causes, okay, and then we are going to suggest ideas. How can we actually solve these inefficiencies and these defects so that, we can move the sigma level from 1, let's say, to sigma level 4, so that we reduce this number of defects and increase the satisfaction yield. And then in the control phase, we are going to make sure that we implement these control measures so that, we can maintain these gains. So that is the explanation in 3 ways on exactly how and when to use the DMAIC methodology. And that is what we are going to do today. So in this webinar, I'm going to start off by telling you how to define a problem, okay? And as I said, at each stage, I'm going to show you what are you required to do. So in this sticker note here, this is what are you required to do. And what you're going to see in this iPad here, this is what you see in any Six Sigma project that has been done correctly. This is literally a checklist that you can see from Nike, okay, from eBay, from Accor Hotels, from anywhere, okay, any Six Sigma project that you're going to see, whether it's in human resources, it's in warehouse, it's in aviation, it's in e-commerce, distribution, Six Sigma in healthcare, whatever, whenever you see a Six Sigma project here, you can be so sure that in the define phase, this is what they did. So this is going to be very important for you because you are attending this webinar so that you can actually do this in practice and record and report it. So it's very important for you to know what needs to be done and what does it look like if it is done correctly. And then in the second slide now, I'm going to introduce you to the different tools to use. These are the tools that are going to make your life easier so that you can achieve these deliverables and basically to tick off everything here. And these tools, you can get them in this Six Sigma Black Belt, also in this course bundle right here, which also comes alongside your certificate and also your course bundle like that. You understand? So that is now what I'm going to do. After that now, I'm going to show you how it was done in practice. And then after that, I'm also going to give you a checklist for you to get started in your own organization. And then you can also record and report this. So that is now what you're going to do. And I'm going to repeat the same method for define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Okay, so right now, let us now get started with the define phase, okay? So in the define phase now, when it comes to the DMAIC methodology of Six Sigma, the most important thing what you have to do here for you to have the best success rate, okay, is just to know what needs to be done, okay? So the main thing, so the main intended outcome here, what you're trying to do, you are trying to identify and address process inefficiencies. And then the first step of doing that is define, okay? So what exactly does it mean to define? So this stage now is concerned with identifying the problem, okay, from the customer's perspective, and then you define the requirements for the project, and then you set the goals for success. At the end of the define phase, okay, you should have answered the question, what is the problem? What is the critical to quality? And then what does the customer expect from you? All right. So what exactly needs to be done here? The first thing that is going to be done, okay, is to identify, okay, from the voice of the customer, from the reviews and the feedback that you're going to get from the clients, you have to identify, is it a product, is it a process, or is it a service that is in need of improvement? And right now, as I said, I'm going to give you a checklist, and then later on, I'm going to show you how exactly can you identify a product, process, or service. As I said, it's very important for you to really understand what needs to be done so that you don't waste time by doing things which will not add any value or any significant benefit to identifying and improve and addressing process inefficiency. The second thing that you have to do in the define phase is now, when you have identified a product or a process or a service that is in need of improvement, within that product, process, or service, you have to identify the internal customer and then the external customer. The internal customer, these are the employees within your organization who are responsible to deliver that product, who are involved in that process, or to deliver that service, and what do they need in order to meet external customer needs and expectations. You also have to identify the consumers, the customers, the clients, okay, who are receiving the product, who benefit from the process and also the service, and what exactly do they expect from your service? What do the customers expect from your process, and what does your customer expect from your product? All right. And then the third item now that needs to be done in the define phase is now to have you now have to explain. This is now when you have to define the requirements. Literally, you have to explain what is currently wrong with the product, with the process, or the service, and what do you need to do in order to improve so that you can meet the goals for your organization and its intended outcomes. So you have to create what you call a team charter. This is going to have a problem statement clearly stating what, how, and when something is wrong about the service, the product, or the process, okay? And then what you also need to do here, you set the goal, financial benefits, scope, and also the required resources. And then after that now, within that product, process, or service, you now have to outline areas of risk, okay? So outlining areas of risk now, you are going to use an SLPC chart so that you can define the boundaries and then also the scope of the project whereby you need to do a product, process, or a service. And then last thing, you need to get approval and receipt from project champions or executive, things like that. All right. So this is basically this is now what you need to know before you actually even define. Because as I said, this is the practical training, and you are expected to go and apply this knowledge in any process that you know, in any process flow, any product or service realization. So it's very important for you to know, what do I need to do before you even get started, all right? So this is now what is expected for you to do. So, okay, so someone here said, we have got a question. Someone said, are the queues for defined phase a checklist to filter out any project that may not be suitable for Six Sigma, or there's a separate checklist to identify if the project is intended in line with Six Sigma methodology? Right. Yes. So, okay, someone basically has asked the question here that, is it, just to summarize, someone said, is it every time that we have to use Six Sigma? Actually, no, okay? What happens now, the define phase, it's also intended, especially this team charter right here. The team charter is going to explain, okay, to the top management and the people, the decision makers in your organization, to determine if indeed there is a need to improve based on the cost and benefit analysis. That is why by the end of the define phase, you should get approval and sign off. Okay. So what you are going to do in the define phase is basically to make it clear to the top management or the executives, basically, that this is how big the problem is, and this is how much it's going to cost us to solve the problem, etc., like that. So it's basically like an explainer. You are basically trying to define, make it very clear that indeed there is a problem here, and this is what we need to do in order to solve it. So yes, some projects, they are going to pass the define phase, but some projects do not pass the define phase, simply put, because of the cost and benefit analysis. It really does not help the organization to solve a problem of $1,000 while spending $100,000 to solve it. Okay, so that is basically what it is. It's basically an explainer stage. So exactly how do you do it now in the define phase? So in the define phase now, you have to do four things. Number one, you have to you have to address, or you have to lay out the project critical to quality. Okay, project CTQ on the process. That means you have critical to quality. This is what matters most to the customers. Okay, when customers are using your products or your services or going through your processes, what is it that matters most to them? Is it time? Is it quality? Is it the color? Is it the taste? Is it the texture? What exactly do the client prefer you over the others? Why is it that they need most from your process? And that one, you get it from the voice of the customers. So these tools now, I'm going to show you how these tools, you can use them in when I'm going to read out the case studies for you. And then the second thing now, you have to outline the business case, explaining to your organization that indeed here, through a team charter, that we have a problem that is costing us this much, and these are the benefits that we are going to get, and that is going to be done by a tool called a business 4-block and project milestone. And then you outline the areas of risk, basically, where these where these inefficiencies can exist within the process. So you do your process map to define the project boundaries, the areas where you are going to identify these process inefficiencies, and you can use a tool called SLPC or project synchronization. And if everything works out, then after approval, you can create a shared vision and to gain consensus from all key stakeholders, basically agreeing that indeed we have a problem at our hand and we can benefit by improving this process right here. So right now, let me show you how these tools can be used. So I'm going to start off with a very simple case study from a bank, okay? Again, remember, this is a process, okay? Mostly, none of you here works at Starbucks, none of you works in a bank, but all of you have got processes in your organization. You have got a customer journey, you have got a product realization or service realization, so that makes it the same thing. So what you're going to do here now, we are now going to read the overview. So here, the quality team at a leading bank is approached by the director of sales. He's very concerned about meeting his sales numbers this year. The people in his sales team have been telling him that they are losing deals to other banks because of customer satisfaction issues. They cannot meet the customer's expectations in terms of delivering funds on time. Okay? So there you have it. In this bank now, their processes of delivering credit card and loans, the funds to their clients, they cannot they cannot do it on time. So the clients, basically, they are losing clients because they are getting other, their loans from other banks, from other competitors. So here now, the sales director wants to know how the company can use Lean Six Sigma to decrease its response time to the customer. So this is typical how Six Sigma starts. You can see here the problem is basically delivering funds on time. But here, okay, at Starbucks, the problem was basically the payment. And as you can know, since other clients, they were complaining, you can see here, okay, it's quite embarrassing when I'm taking too much to scroll through my cards. So here also at this Starbucks, maybe they're going to say, I'm going to leave this location and I'm going to get my coffee in another coffee shop. You understand? The idea or the point I'm trying to make is that all these process inefficiencies, when you are looking, especially when you are learning about Lean Six Sigma, is to focus on the process rather than the context or what exactly is happening around it. That you can do at a later stage. So here now, let us see how exactly did they use the VOC, the business 4-block, SLPC, and also stakeholder analysis. So here now, they say step number one is basically to give an overview of the problem. What exactly is happening here? So the sales director wants to know, how can we use Lean Six Sigma to decrease response time to the customer? Okay, that is what they need to do. So the first thing that you have to do is to identify who is the customer here. Okay, while the initial customer for this project is the sales director, the ultimate customer for whom the process to improve is the individual or business requesting the loan. You can see that the external and the internal customers. What exactly is the critical to quality? What do the customer really want from this bank? Based on the voice of customer collected by the sales director, loan applicants, they want a faster response from this bank. Now, what do we need to do? Now that is this stage here that we have done. We have defined the critical to quality through the voice of the customer. We now need to define the team charter and the business 4-block project milestone. So they say based on the data collection and interviews with key executives, the Lean Six Sigma team has developed a preliminary business case. The business case, this is now when you are going to explain what exactly is wrong with the process, product, or service, and what can we benefit if we solve this problem, and what does it take to solve this problem. So you are going to have one box with the information, the description, critical to qualities, and also the resources. So as you can see here, they say, what do they want to do? The vision or the goal here. The goal is to deliver 100% of these credit cards and the funds when the customer needs them, okay? And then what is the problem statement? That means what is currently wrong with the process, product, or service. And currently 40% of the loans, they are being delivered after the customer requested date, and this has resulted in $35 million revenue loss. Okay, so what exactly would they want to do with Six Sigma here? They want to reduce this variation by 50% in 6 months. How is it going to benefit them? Productivity and cost avoidance up to $28 million. This is basically the critical to qualities and the resources required. So that is what you do with the business 4-block project milestone, and that is how you write a team charter with financial benefits, goal statement, and then the required resources. This is the stage when Six Sigma projects are going to be approved or they're not going to be approved. It basically depends on the cost and benefit analysis. After that now, we now need to do process mapping to define the project boundaries. Where exactly are these process inefficiencies going to be identified and addressed? So we are going to use an SLPC2, and this was able to define better boundaries of the project. As you can see, this is a bank. They've got a lot of different operations, different departments, different processes. But right now, you use an SLPC to zero in on exactly where would you like to address those inefficiencies. So we are going to start off now with the customers. You start off with who exactly benefits from this process that needs improvement, okay? Where we need to address this, who exactly is the customer or the end receiver of this product, this service, or this process. In this case, that is the borrower who needs a credit card or a business that needs a loan. What exactly is the output of this process? It's basically a complete loan package, a credit card, or loan offer. What exactly is the process which delivers these outputs? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay, you set it up in the system, underwrite it, and then you prepare the final offer. What exactly are the inputs? Is a credit card loan application form. Who is the supplier? The new client who needs funds, the sales representative, and the brokers who needs the funds. So ladies and gentlemen, this is basically what you're expected to do in the define phase. One thing I want you to notice here is basically the simplicity and how straightforward this is. And this is basically what we expect you to do. You know, it's one thing to get, this is green belt training like that. But no matter any kind of training that you're going to take in Six Sigma, it can be maroon belt, pink belt, or black belt, whatever belt that you're going to get, without having documented information demonstrating that indeed you know how to apply these tools so that you can identify these inefficiencies, literally it does not carry any value. So these case studies right here, and I'm also going to read you these other case studies so that you can see how easy it is to do, and most importantly, how you can record it. So what you do now here, when you get this presentation, you scroll down. You and your team in your organization, you have to start on these questions. When you ask these questions that I've highlighted in blue, you are going to find out that your responses, they are going to be like this, okay? Now, let us now go to the stage where for you to get started. Now, I'm going to give you a checklist of how you can determine what is the problem, what is the critical to quality, and what does the customer expect. How can you define the problem? The first thing you have to define in your organization, who is the customer here? In this case study, the customer, the internal customer with the bank employees who are responsible for issuing credit card and loans, and the external customer here was the clients who need funds or loans. You also have to outline the critical to quality parameter. What exactly do the clients need from your process, product, or service? Okay. In this case study now, the critical to quality parameter was faster response. Okay. They want delivery on time. And the thing that you're going to see is that in all of these processes, right now we are talking of delivery of funds. Maybe you work for a company like Uber Eats or Talabat. You are going to see that at the end of the day, the customer, they need more or less the same thing. When you order food online, you also need faster delivery. So you need your food to be delivered on time. So there shouldn't be any difference just because here we have got a credit card being delivered and here we have got food being delivered, and then all of a sudden you are confused like what is happening. Okay, it is literally the same. You have to focus on the process that is going on. And then number 3, you have to develop a business case. That means determine what exactly is the problem. And in this case study that I've given you, the problem was that 40% of their credit card and loan was being delivered late, which resulted in what? In $28 million loss. Okay, what are the goal statements? They said we want to reduce variation by 50%. Those are the milestones, the scope. This was the credit card and loan offers, the resources and financial benefit. We are going to get $28 million in productivity and cost avoidance, as you saw from that case study. And then you have to outline the scope. Where exactly are you going to identify these process inefficiencies where you need to address them? And then you use a high level as a state of business process and use an SLPC chart. All right, like they've said they have shown you. And then after that, you submit it now to the relevant stakeholders so that you can gain consensus on the business case. Everything here should make sense business-wise because this is a business, and it basically in other words, the problem has to be big enough so that it outweighs the solution basically should be the problem should be big enough so that it initiates the need to invest resources, time, and effort to actually solve it in an organization. Okay, so basically that is what you do in the define phase. Okay, and during this define phase now, this is when you are what? This is now when you have to determine what does the customer define as the problem. Okay, this is when you define the problem, and that is how you identify the problem and also identify these requirements. Okay, so after this webinar, what you need to do, number 1, you also now have to understand why do we have this business case here. That means you should be able to come back to this presentation and then you can tick off that, okay, I know this is what they're doing here. When you open these case studies from and then it can be Six Sigma in construction and so ever. When you look at these case studies at eBay, you should be able to understand, okay, they did this because they were outlining areas of risk. They did this because they were identifying the customer. This is the proper way to give you a better shot at actually applying this knowledge in real life, so that whenever there is a process, you can identify and address these inefficiencies. And when I say a process, it means any product or service license process. It means the steps, what you do from A to Z when you deliver a product or a service in your organization. So these 2 case studies, they are also going to be attached alongside your course bundle so that you can practice and basically know why did they do this. The moment you figure out what is this and why it was done, you are going to see that to apply it on your own, it is basically going to be very, very easy. Now, we have now looked at what does the customer define as a problem. We now have to go to the second stage of what exactly are the characteristics of this problem. So the characteristics of this problem, this is now going to be the measurement phase where we need to quantify the problem. Okay, so this is going to come right after the define phase. Now, when we go to the measurement phase now, during the measurement phase, we want to develop a deep understanding of what does the customer want from us. Okay, so by the end of the measure phase, you should have determined, can you actually measure, okay? Can you actually measure this process, okay? Can you actually measure the size of this problem? And then also you have to determine how is your process performing, okay? That is how you develop a deep understanding of what your customer wants from you. In the measurement phase, as I said, we want to translate the voice of the customer to become the voice of the process. As I said, you can see this is the voice of the customer right here, and then this is the voice of the process. So this is now what happens in the measurement phase. Yes, I can measure it because I've got these different stages, and I can also determine how the process is performing by calculating the capability right here. So that is what you want to do. So in the measurement phase now, again, I'm going to give you a list of what will you see in any case study that has been done correctly, okay? You are going to see that in the measurement phase, they are going to drill down on customers' critical to quality parameters. That means this is basically this, okay? These ones here, you can see these different stages. These are basically the critical to quality parameters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that is the critical quality parameters. Basically, the steps that you take in order to meet the customer's needs and expectations. And then you also have to find the best measurement you need so that you can measure the performance. So you need the performance standard for big Y, which is the process. So the performance standard, that means you are also going to define what you call the target. You are going to define the upper specification limit and the lower specification limit, and also what is a defect. All of this I'm going to show you right now. I'm just giving you a list which is going to guide you so that you understand beforehand what do I need to do. The moment you just don't know what do I need to do at each stage, the goose is cooked. There is no way whatsoever that you're going to complete that phase correctly. It all starts by clearly knowing without any shred of doubt what needs to be done in the measurement phase, what needs to be done in the define phase. If you can know what needs to be done at that stage, then doing it is only going to be a matter of looking at other case studies, and then you can also just apply it, so as to say. And then, as part of developing a deep understanding of what your customer wants from you to determine the characteristics, you also should have what you call a detailed process map. A detailed process map is going to be a functional map, clearly helping everyone understand the processes, the product or the service realization, the detailed process map where you are going to identify these inefficiencies so that you can improve them. And then there should be a clear definition of a defect. What exactly is a defect? Simply put, a defect is a mistake. A defect is anything that will make the customer unhappy. So this definition of a defect should be the same for the external and internal customers. And in this case, a defect is going to be between, okay, a defect is going to be below the lower specification limit and above the upper specification limit. After that now, since this is the measurement phase, we want to quantify the problem. We are going to initiate data gathering process. How are we going to gather data here? What we are going to do here, ladies and gentlemen, is basically determining the performance of the process, okay? So when you are doing your data collection, we are basically looking for the number of defects on those critical to quality parameters that we determined at the beginning, okay? So this is now what needs to be done in the measurement phase. This is what is done when you are developing a deep understanding from what your customer wants from you. Now we move on to how to do it, okay? How to do it now, this is now when you're going to use your toolkit, okay? When you open your toolkit, please check your email inbox. All these links, they've been sent to you, all right? For those who have already paid for this webinar, please go to your student dashboard and you can open the toolkit. You can see all these tools, they've been sent to you with the different case studies and also all these, also the different, examples on how to use these tools. So in the measurement phase now, you have to do, first thing is to define the critical to quality characteristics. What you're trying to do here is to link the customer critical to quality to a measurable process. Okay, and what exactly is happening here? When we say link what the customer wants to a measurable process, if you look at this simple example at Starbucks, okay, we can go back to Mr. or to, to this lady here with a very difficult name to pronounce, Natalia, maybe, I don't know. Okay, so what are we trying to do here? We want to link the customer critical to a measurable process. So here now, okay, the lady here, they said having to wait a long time for a seat. This is what the customer wants, okay? This is the critical to quality here. So we now need to link this to a measurable process, which is this one right here, which you can see right here. So that is now what that is what is happening in the measurement phase. And the tools at your disposal, I'm going to show you how you can use that, is the X functional process map, the total product cycle time, or the fishbone or the fault mode and effect analysis. So when it comes to these tools, the whole thing, please, it's simplicity. You don't have to do way too much, which unfortunately is a common theme in these Six Sigma projects. Okay, usually it's a paralysis by analysis. Most Bosch Six Sigma project is basically of trying to do way too much than what is expected. Most of these things, to tell you honestly speaking, is just common sense. So, and I'm also going to present that common sense in these case studies right here to show you the tools that you have to use to link the customer critical to quality to a measurable process. And then, since we want to quantify the problem, the second step is to outline the performance standard. That means we are going to define what exactly is a defect here, what exactly is considered a mistake in this process, and what is considered unacceptable. And then we also have to define the specification limit, okay? What is the upper specification limit, the maximum point before it becomes a defect, and the lower specification limit before it also becomes a defect for the internal customers. And then we are going to start collecting our data on the inputs and the outputs of those critical to quality characteristics that we have linked to a measurable process or service characteristic, and then we validate this data like that. So what you do now at this point, you come over here and your team, okay, and then you start brainstorming on these questions right here, okay? So these are the questions now that you get started, and you should end up with something like this. So you're going to first of all start defining the critical to quality characteristics. So here now, with the approval from the Six Sigma Steering Committee, the team can now proceed to the measurement phase, okay? So this is now what they're doing here. Okay, they are now linking what the customer needs to a measurable process, translating the voice of the customer to the voice of the process. So a detailed process map is created to ensure that everyone has a common understanding of the key flow inputs and deliverables, because this is the detailed process map that you are going to have your Kaizen events on, and this is also when you are going to have collectively as a team identifying those critical characteristics which are historically causing problems. So there should be a detailed process map. And at this bank, basically, it all starts with the customer. He contacts the sales representative. The sales representative takes the completed credit card application loan, and then he reviews the contract. Okay, he sends it to the credit department. The credit department, they do credit check. They send this information to the government, central bank. They approve the credit card. They also, prepare the one offer. The contract is retained from the operations department. One offer with the credit department, and another offer also with the customer right here. So this maps now, it helps to identify the process steps that have historically caused issues in approving these loans. So as you can see, this is the detailed process map right here. And if you open another Six Sigma case study, you are going to see again, there is a different process map here, okay? So please don't be confused that, okay, that is for the bank, okay, that is for the rubber manufacturing processes, that is for Starbucks. If you do that, of course, that means you're going to learn this at least 1,000 times before you can figure it out. What happens at each stage is literally the same thing, okay? So that is why you just need to understand these tools. Once you have these tools, they are going to help you to achieve this deliverable the same way that it happened here. So to define these critical characteristics now, the team here, they've used the fishbone diagram to discuss the possible root causes that are causing issues and leading to unacceptable response time. Which step here is really affecting this process? So they use the fishbone diagram here in order, they say the process here, the intended outcome, this is the process, of approving credit card and loans. And this process is can be affected by customer, people, material, method, and the environment. And manual data entry here is a brainstorming session. They said this is the step that is affecting this process. Okay, so that is now how they have translated now the voice of the customer to become the voice of the process. Okay, and as you can see here, is literally the same thing. At Starbucks here, we said this is the step that is causing historical issues. So this one right here, it is literally the same thing as just mentioning it over here. Okay, and I also have to say, I'm very sorry if switching between these case studies is going to confuse you. I'm going to do less of that, but the main thing that I want you to do is to quickly understand that this has more to do with the process rather than these other details. Where is it coming from? Because that is, once you just figure out that, that is what you need to do, you can use it in any process that you need. Okay. Hopefully that point has been made very clearer. So the second step now is to outline the performance standard. That means you have to define in that process now what is a defect and what are the specification limits here. So that is now this stage here. So the team has to determine the best way to measure the problem and also to agree on the definition of a defect. So that is what you call a performance standard. So using interviews with customers and key staff in sales and operations, the team is able to define the upper specification and the lower specification, target and definition. This is the best way to measure the problem. What is the upper specification? That means the maximum point before it becomes a defect. That means is a credit card or loan being delivered after 3 days. What is the lower specification limit before it becomes a defect for the internal customers, the organization that is trying to rush things and try to give a credit card or loan below 12 hours. What is a defect then? A defect, this is a credit card or loan being issued after 3 days or before 12 hours. What is the target? Okay, this is the point we have to meet in order to avoid a defect, and that is basically between the upper and the lower specification limit. That is 36 hours, and that is what you do here. Now, they have to start data collection. When you are collecting data now, okay, when you have identified these critical quality parameters which are historically causing problems, you measure data on the inputs and then the outputs. So basically, if I'm going to do my data collection here, I'm going to measure, okay, when they arrive at the store looking for seat until the time basically they leave the seat. So I'm going to measure the number of people who are going to come into the shop and also the number of people who are going to get the seats or not. Okay, if I'm going to do my measurement on payments, I'm going to start collecting data on the number of payments attempted and also the number of payments which have been declined. Basically, you have to start data collection on the inputs and also on the outputs of those debts which have historically caused issues in the process. So that is what they did here. So the data collection plan now, they started measuring, okay, time when the application was submitted to the credit department until the time when it was sent to the credit department, to the central bank. So as you can see, this is now the data. Some files, they took 10 minutes. Some of them, they were rejected, the 00. Some of them 1 minute, some 5 minutes, like that. So this variation here, this is now what, this is now the voice of the process. The process is telling us now that there's a lot of variation. Some files are being rejected, some are being accepted, and like that. And then in the analyze phase now, we have to find out why. Okay, we need to know why some files are taking so long, why some are being rejected, and why some are going through right up like that. So that is now what you do in the measurement phase. For you now, how can you start doing this? For you now, okay, you are going to, number one, you have to link what the customer wants to a characteristic or a step in the process. And in this case study now, the customer, they want faster response, and we link the faster response to credit check and data and manual data entry, which is the step within the process. You understand? Because I can measure that step in the process so that I can improve it. You understand? And then you also have to ensure that the operational definition of critical to quality performance is the same as the customer. That means both the customer and also the client, the organization, you should all have the same definition of what you need. operational definitions can be different. For example, if I'm going to call Emirates now and I ask the Emirates airline, how long does it take to to get to London, okay, from Dubai to London, they are going to tell you that it's 4 hours. But in reality, okay, from Dubai to London, it's about 8 hours, because you have to consider checking time, okay? You also have to consider the time you wait to board the plane to, so that is an instance that, the definitions of this critical to quality can be different. That is another example on how this can play out. So you should actually make sure that how you define the process, the performance standard, the way you define the upper specification, the way you define the target, the defects and so on is the same as the customer. So that both of you not measure different things, just like the airlines. This usually happens in the airlines. It's not 4 hours, it's more than that, okay? And then you also should define what exactly is the defect in this process, okay? So that means the defect should also include the upper and the lower specification limit. The target performance, what is the point that you have to meet in order to avoid a defect, the mistake. And in this case study, the defect was a credit card being issued after 3 days, or trying to prepare a credit card below 12 hours. Target performance was 36 hours. Upper specification was 3 days. Lower specification was 12 hours, okay? And then you should now start collecting data if you don't have historical data. That means you go to the point, or you look at those critical to quality parameters that you have determined using the fishbone diagram here, and then you measure on the inputs and then the outputs. You gather data so that you can determine how the process is performing. And then lastly, you should ensure that the system measurement, there's a reliable measurement system in place. And a reliable measurement system here, it means that, for example, here they use the data entry log from a computer. So that is reliable. There's no any point of human error there. Okay, so now at the end of the measurement phase, that is when you have to, those are the characteristics of that current problem. Now, as part also, what we are doing here, we are identifying and addressing these inefficiencies in a process. So we started off by defining the problem, okay? That means we started off by determining what does the customer define as the problem. We also quantified this problem. That means the characteristics of that problem. And then also, now we are going to the analyze phase. We want to identify the cause of the problem. And in the analyze phase now, in the analyze phase, what is considered the problem here is this variation here. The problem now at this point is basically, why is it we're having variation at this step that is historically causing problems right here that you have determined in the measurement phase. So we are now going to go to the analyze phase to identify the cause of the problem. Now we are going to the stage whereby we determine what exactly are the root causes. All right. So that is now the one that is the analyze phase. So in the analyze phase now, the purpose of this phase is to start exploring all the possible root causes that affect or that can affect the performance of your process and or your product. Okay. By the end of the analyze phase, you should have determined what is the current process. This is when we are going to measure the capability, okay, of the process. That means the Z-score or the defect parts per million opportunities. Basically, like, how good is the process, and then also we need to determine what are the root causes if the process performance is very low. So here now, basically, this is done in three things. First of all, they determine what you say process capability. How good is the current process? What is the current Z-score? How many defects are being made per million opportunities? Okay. And then number two, they have to determine, or you have to determine or define, state what exactly is your objective. So for example, let's say you are making 500,000 defects per million opportunities. Okay. That is your current process capability. And then what exactly would you like to achieve? And then you can say, we want to reduce our defects from 500,000 only to 2 defects per million opportunities. Okay, that is your performance objective. And then now we are going to look at what are the reasons, okay, what is causing this difference on the current process capability of, for example, 500,000 defects to 2 defects. Why do you think you're not having 2 defects here? Why do you think, okay, is causing, is basically, preventing you from reaching that performance. That is when we identify those sources of variation. So that is basically the analyze phase. The analyze phase, this is basically a very simple stage. Number one, how good is the process? How good do you want it to be? And then what is causing that difference between what you want to be and what do you have? Okay. To give you a very simple example here, what usually happens, okay? I can say, what is your current bank balance right now? Okay, how much money do you have in your account? That is, for example, that would be the equivalence of process capability. And then I ask you, how much money do you want to have? Okay, let's say you've got $100 in your account, and your objective, what you want to have, is $1 million. Okay, so we are going to look for the sources. Why exactly do you have $100 instead of $1 million? Those are going to be the sources of variation, and that is what we are going to improve. So you can say the reason why I don't have $1 million is because, whatever reasons that you're going to have. So we are also going to look at those reasons, and then we see how can we address them so that you can meet your $1 million objective. That is literally what is happening in the analyze phase. But at the end of it, we want to determine, you want to answer the question, what is my current process and what are the root causes? So here now, as I said, there are three things that you do. There's, first of all, you determine process capability. So you are going to measure the Z-score, and then you are going to have graphical representation of capability. When you say graphical representation, it means that you are going to use a histogram so that you can do what you call spread of the process. So you can say, let's say your process capability is 1, sigma level 1, okay? And then we are going to compare sigma level 1 to your target, okay, to your customer expectations, your average, and also your objective, your performance objective. That is going to be called spread of the process. Graphical representation is basically going to, for lack of better words, to show you how bad is your process, okay? How far off do you fall from what would you like it to be? And then that is going to be the tools at your disposal, is basically a histogram, Gantt chart, or a Pareto analysis. And then the second thing here in the analyze phase is basically to define what would you like to achieve from this process, your attainable goals. So where exactly can you get these attainable goals? You can compare with other processes, or you can do benchmark, etc. like that, with other institutions or other processes which are achieving your goals. And then we are now going to look for the source of variation. We are going to look at the reason, what is standing in between your performance objectives and your current process capabilities. And we are going to list the main causes or the actives that are affecting this process. And then for if the process capability is less than 1, okay, that means we are going to use lean tools. If it is more than 1, if it is more than 3, we are going to be using sigma tools. So the tools at your disposal here, they include value add, SOE, tag time, and effective hours. So what you do now with this information, you basically come over here, okay, and then you start discussing these questions here. These questions are going to help you to kickstart the analyze phase, and then you should have something like this. Okay, so now in the analyze phase, the first thing here, what we need to do is to have process capability, and then we are going to compare the current performance of the process to the, then we are going to do graphical representation. So what happened here now is that the members of the project team, they calculated the process capability to ensure that, they properly documented the current performance level before any improvements were implemented. And using data for the previous year, they calculated the difference, okay, between the time when the credit card application was received and the time when the final decision on the credit card or loan was communicated to the borrower. And using a statistical software, okay, Excel is more than enough, or Minitab, they calculated the average and the standard deviation. So in order to calculate the process capability, the Z-score, because this is continuous data that they collected here, they collected continuous data here, so they're going to use the Z-score. So the Z-score now, which is basically the sigma level, okay, you say average response time, which they calculated from using Excel, and the standard deviation also from Excel. You say Z-score equals to upper specification limit minus the average divided by standard deviation. This is the upper specification limit right here, and also those are the details. And then This now, the Z-score, this is the process is 0.3. That means it's less than 1. This is a very poorly performing process, which brings us back to this chart right here. You can see this is a poorly performing process with probably a yield of around 10%. Okay, so what you're going to do now, we are now going to do spread of the process. That means we now need to see how good or how bad is this process based on this data. So the histogram below is going to compare the current performance, okay, current performance of the process. That means we are going to compare 0.3, okay, the capability of 0.3 is going to be compared with customer expectation, the performance level required in all, and also the target, okay. So this is basically the results here. So as you can see, the frequency, these are the number of credit card and loans being issued, and also the 0, 30, 60, 90, 120. This is basically the hours that they pass by. So you can see the target, the mean, and the upper specification, and this is basically going to really show them how far off are they falling off based on their capability of this process. This is how you know how good your process is, okay? And then now the second thing now is to say, okay, what exactly are the attainable goals? What would you like to have? Right now, our capability is 0.3. What do we need to have? So for this project, since the customer, so that is the performance objective for this process. So since the customer requirements were clearly, were defined very clearly, benchmark was not required. So we are going to use that. What we'd like to achieve here is to deliver all these credit card and loans when the customer expected. At this point, only 90% or 10% only of the customers, they are receiving them on time. So, you know, we actually need to increase these so that everyone can get them, to reduce variation by 50%, as they said in the define phase. So the next stage now is now to look for these sources of variation, whereby we are going to look at what exactly is causing the difference between these two. What exactly is in the way between the capability and also these objectives, so that we can really prioritize the list of the factors that are affecting the processes right here. So to identify these sources of variation, first of all, what they did now, so they need to confirm that there's a relationship between response time and lost deals, okay? So what basically happened here was that, you know, the reason why this organization is not having, they are not meeting their objective, okay? At this stage, one of the suggested reasons, the sources of variation here, was because they are taking way too long to respond to customers. So the customers, they are choosing other banks. So what we need to do here now, after a source of variation has been identified in these group discussions, we now need to confirm that is it true. So we need to confirm the relationship. Okay, these lost deals, are they actually happening because of response time? So they conducted a correlation study and also plotted the data using a scatter plot, okay, as you can see right here. So they said, so they used data from 2 quarters and they plotted the average response time for each month to the number of lost deals. And using a statistical software, the coefficient R was calculated to be 0.979. So yes, this is very close to 1, and this is a confirmation that indeed your source of variation here is true. We are losing deals because of response time. So what you're going to do with your team, whenever you find reasons why are you not meeting your performance objectives, the next step is basically to confirm that relationship using this scatter plot. And as you can see here, this is the number of lost deals, and this is the cycle time. And of course, there is a relationship because, as you can see, all these dots, they are close to this line, meaning that there's a relationship. After confirming the relationship, whatever reason that you say, okay, this is basically the reason, what the second thing here to identify and now to prioritize the list of X's. First, you identify these sorts of variation, and we now need to prioritize these X's, the factors that are affecting the process. We now need to understand the relationship between what exactly is the relationship between cycle time and lost deals. So we need to determine whether other competitors, are they really better at this sort of variation? Other banks, are they actually the banks, you know, which have got processes that we desire to be like, the processes which are meeting the objective, are they actually better at solving this sort of variation? So what we do, we conduct a hypothesis test, and then we compare the response time to that of their customers. Like, okay, if customer response time is affecting our business, let us see how is it also for the other customer, for the other organization. And as you can see, the t-test result says that the cycle time for a company is 2.7, the cycle time for other banks is 1.5. So indeed, the other banks who are actually meeting their process objectives, who are doing better than us in this regard, they actually have what they are responding to their customers. The p-value of less than 0.05 confirms that yes, indeed, there is a relation, there's a difference between our company, the performance of our organization with other competitors. So we now can confirm that indeed here, the source of variation, it is because of what? Is because of the response time to these lot deals. Okay, so armed with this information, we now need to move to the improvement phase so that we can solve it. So I'm also going just to repeat to you, following up the example I gave you about your bank account in the analyze phase, so that you can really understand what is happening. So when we say the baseline process capability, okay, we are going first of all to determine how much do you have in your bank account, your current capability. And then let's say you say $100, and $100, we can say, yes, this is a very low amount. And we are going to compare $100, okay, to what do you expect to have in your account, what are you expected to have in your account, and what you should have in order to meet your cost of living, etc. like that. That is what happened here. And then in this stage now, we are in the defining performance objectives. We are going to look at, okay, what exactly amount do you need to have in your bank account? So we can do benchmarking, or maybe we can say from your own objective, you need at least this amount of money, 1 million for your cost of living. Now, what do you need to do? We are going to ask you, why do you think that, this goal has not been achieved? So maybe you can say, my income is low, or maybe I've got a lot of expenses. That is your source of variation. We are going to take that reason that you gave us why you don't have that amount in your bank account, and we are going to confirm a relationship. Is there a relationship between huge expenses, okay, spending habit, and also low bank balance? And this is what they have here. After doing that now, we are also going to do a hypothesis test to compare people who spend less than you. Do they actually have a bigger bank balance than you? And indeed, it is confirmed here that people who spend less money than you, they've got a bigger bank balance than you. That is basically what we do. And armed with that information, we see that yes, other people, they basically have got less spending habits than you. So we are going to move into the improvement phase to focus on that spending habit, which has been identified as a source of variation. Hopefully, this example it clarifies things. I know it's a bizarre example, but that is the clearest way that you can really understand these things. So for you now, how can you get started with the analyze phase in your organization? First of all, after you determine the Z-score, or you measure the process capability, you have to compare, okay, through a histogram, graphical representation of data to detect that patterns. You compare your current capability to your objectives, your upper specification limit, your target, and also your average, okay? So that you can really understand how far do you fall off. And then you define and calculate the Z-score. And actually, I always forget to change this, okay? I always say I will change it after the webinar. Actually, what you do here, the first thing is to calculate the Z-score, okay? That is what you do. The first thing here is to calculate, and then the Z-score, the defects per million, okay? And in the case study, the Z-score was 0.3. You take that Z-score, and then you compare it with your what? With your objective, your operational objective, what you want to achieve, your upper specification limits, and also with with your average and mean, so that you can really understand the spread of the process. And then now you are going to confirm the relationship between the identified list of X's through the scatter plot, so that you can list down what exactly are the factors that are causing this variation. And then you should also benchmark best-in-class operations to better refine your goal, okay? When you say you are benchmarking, that means you have to compare with other processes that are doing good at you, like what exactly would you like to achieve. That is going to give you a very good measurement standard so that you know what to achieve. And then lastly, you should also test on population differences the same way that we did when we did the hypothesis testing. We have to look at other processes or other organizations who are really good at that source of variation to determine if indeed, if we improve this source of variation, can it also lead us to better results like that. Okay, so after that now, we now go to the improvement phase. At the end now of the analyze phase, we now have a list of axes. We have now confirmed the source of variation. We did our scatter plot, and then we also did our hypothesis testing. So we actually know what is affecting our process, and we also have compared and we've seen what can happen if we solve it. So this phase now is going to this phase of improvement is going to focus on selecting improvement ideas that were identified by the team or determined through data analysis. That is what you're going to do in the improvement phase. By the end of the improvement phase, what you want to do here is basically to determine how can I fix these root causes, okay? How can I fix those axes? And in this case now, we want to determine how can I fix, basically the late responses as we have done, that we have found in the analyze phase. So here now in the improvement phases, you have to screen for those axes determined in the analyze phase, and then also solutions. And these solutions, they're basically pilot ideas, prior ideas that have been identified by the team or determined through data analysis. And how do you do it now? Basically, you have one job here. Literally, you have got one job. That means identify the main issues that are affecting the process, okay, and then the implementable solutions, which is something that we have already done in the what. We have identified these vital axes in the what? In the analyze phase. So if we are working on standardization, which is workflow redesign for Sigma, if the Sigma level, the process capability was less than 1, we are going to use lean tools like Kaizen 5S, non-value adding, and line balance to eliminate the waste. If basically we are working on quality and optimization, we are going to use, we need to establish variable relationship, and we use Sigma tools like regression. Okay, so let me show you actually how this was done. So, and of course, here, all of what you have to do with this information, you basically have to come over here, and then you start with these questions like that. So these questions, they are going to give you something like this. Okay, so in the improvement phase now, you have to identify the vital axes and implementable solutions. Okay, that is what you want to do here. In the improvement phase, we want to determine how can I fix these root causes. Okay, so in the measurement phase, okay, in order to identify these vital axes and to determine the solutions, we have to go back to the measurement phase. In the measurement phase, using a fishbone diagram, we agreed that manual data entry had the largest impact on overall process cycle time. And right now, we have to understand why. So as you can see, this was the improvement phase here. Okay, this was the measurement phase. And in the measurement phase, we list the team here. Okay, they said this credit check and application data entry was the step that is causing historical issues in this process. So right now, in order to improve, we have to find out why. Okay, so using the same tool, the fishbone, the team conducted another brainstorming session, and the results pointed to one central reason, which is missing critical information. Okay, missing critical information was the reason why data cycle entry time historically caused issues in this process. So this is basically what they did. And then they say data cycle entry time, the critical quality parameter that we identified in the measurement phase, can be affected by customer, people, environment, and missing information. So missing information can be caused by the font size on the application form, the information type, the delivery mode, or the list of information. So here now, the list of axes, they said basically missing information can be caused by 3 things. Number 1, the method by which the credit card or loan application was received, whether is it email, fax, or mail. And then they said whether the list of documents or the required documents have been provided to the borrower, and also whether the varying types of documentation has been requested from the borrower like that. So after this brainstorming session, you need to validate this theory, okay? You really need to validate that indeed missing information, is it a vital X here? Missing data information. So to validate it now, you're going to use regression and to determine, basically to determine the mathematical relationship between missing information and the process cycle time. So in this case now, with the high adjusted R2 value of close to 90%, there was a strong relationship that yes, indeed, missing information is affecting the cycle time. And this was the regression equation. So in this time now, they concluded that the missing data that should be only the maximum allowed data should be 3.2 missing data points on these application forms. Any credit card or loan application form in this process should not have more than 3 blank points. So now the team has to determine what process of the customer's data collection they need to change in order never to exceed 3 blank points on this application form. Okay, so they said now through the design of the experiment, okay, they said what you're going to do, we are going to, the improvement ideas, number one, we are going to receive them by email. Okay, number two, we are also going to give the borrowers, okay, or the clients a checklist of the required documents and the required information to be completed, and we are also going to request for 2 years of their bank statement. Okay, so this is now the team must pilot these solutions to confirm the results of the experiments and to develop the control long-term sustainability. So how this is going to happen now, in order to solve this problem right here, to make sure that they will never exceed 3 missing data points, they are now going to receive, okay, they are going to, some applications, they are going to compare applications received via email and via mail, okay, and also when the list of required documents was provided or not provided, and also whether they asked for 1 or 2 years of bank statement, okay? So this is now what they need to do, and to confirm the results of the experiments, they are going to develop control plans in order to do that. So that is what you're going to look at in the measurement phase to determine if indeed which of these two scenarios is going to result in reducing these lower data points. And of course, just to tell you here, the solution, what they did, the best combination was to gather, to receive the application by email, and also to give the checklist and to collect 1 year of the bank statements. These were the three outcomes that basically had to reduce this problem right here of missing data information. And then for you now in the improvement phase, how you can get started. Okay, you can get started now by, first of all, you have a short list of these X's. Okay, so you go back to the improvement phase. What exactly did you determine as the root causes, as the critical quality parameter that caused the step within your process flow that caused a lot of problems historically, and then you basically have to do a fishbone diagram to determine the causes behind it. And then you should actually ensure that your X's, they are really controllable and you don't have any Y's in the list. That's why you see our X here was basically missing information being caused by the font, the type of information, and also the type of the information that has been provided. And then also you should establish your improvement approach, okay? Regression for quality and optimization, Kaizen basically for standardization and to eliminate waste. And then if you're pursuing a Kaizen event, that means you want to reduce inefficiency and standardization. Your Z-score was below, was basically less than 1. That means, you have the necessary support to implement these suggested improvements. In this case study, they need support in order to change the way they collect data or they interact with the customers from the top management, because they are pursuing a Kaizen event and it's suggesting improvements of sending a checklist, also requesting for 1 year of bank statement, and also requesting the application to be submitted via email. And then also when you are validating those critical X's, okay, you should actually, your R2 attained value should have acceptable level of predictability. And in this case, it was up to 90%. So that, it was very predictable. There was a relationship like that. And then you should have a final and a short list of vital X's, as you saw, missing information, and those 3 vital X's that follow through. Now, the last stage now that you're going to do, and the last step, when you are identifying, okay, when you're identifying and addressing inefficiencies in a process, we looked at how you can define, how you can measure, analyze, and improve. Now we are going to go into how to maintain the solution. When you are maintaining the solution, that means you want to determine the controls that should be implemented to sustain that improvement. That means you'd like to, know how can you keep these root causes in control so that you don't have to fix them again. So that is now the last stage of identifying and addressing these process inefficiencies. So that is the control phase, which is the last stage. This phase now is focused on successfully passing the project to a functional owner and ensure what long-term sustainability. At the end of the control phase, you want to determine how can I keep these root causes in control so I don't have to fix them again. So what you need to do here, first of all, is to validate the measurement system on these axes. And in this case now, these axes now, these are the factors or the issues that are affecting the process. And in this X now was missing information. Okay, missing information, blank spaces on this credit card and loans application. So we need a measurement system to determine that, okay, the improvement ideas, are they actually fixing these X's? Are they not reoccurring again after the improvement phases? And then after that, if these X's, they are not reoccurring, okay, we now need to measure again the process capability. We now need to calculate the Z-score, the sigma level, to determine if there are any improvements based from the improvement stage, okay? And then you have to implement the process control if the process capability is now at an acceptable level, all right? So this is what needs to be done, and then this is how you do it, and those are the tools at your disposal. This one in the control phase, the last thing, okay, the first thing is to validate the measurement system on this axis. When you are the improvement phase, is all about controlling, fixing those root causes. So you should actually have a measurement system to determine if indeed those root causes are in check. So there should be a measurement system in place for those root causes to make sure that indeed they're in check. And then I'm going to show you how you can do that. And then you also should calculate the process capability to determine post-improvement capability. This is going to confirm whether or not really the improvement ideas, they helped through this process. And then we are going to calculate the defect per million opportunities and also the Z-score. And then lastly, if everything checks out, and then we go back to to the define phase to see if indeed we have achieved what we said in the project plan, okay, in the business case. And then we can implement and develop control plans so that we can keep these X's and root causes in control so that we don't have to fix them again. So what you do here with this information, you basically get started from these questions right here. When you are answering these questions with your team, you are now going to have something like this. So right here, I'm going to start off now by showing you how you can have a measurement system for those X's, which is adequate. So here now, the measurement system, what they did in this case now, they on a daily basis, 40 random files were collected and the number of missing data points was counted. Okay, this process was repeated for 20 days. They are, as you can see, they are looking for these missing data points here. Okay, that is basically measuring these X's. And why are they doing that? Because they want to determine, okay, whether or not these solutions that have been suggested, are they actually solving those root causes that have been identified. So they measured now for 20 days and they plotted it now on this C chart here. So the data was plotted on a C chart and the average number of missing data points for 40 files on a daily basis was 1.5. So as you can see now, these control in these improvement phases, they basically had some improvement ideas so that we are going to have less than 3 blank points on this application form. And indeed, these improvement actions, they worked because they now average 1.5 missing points on this blank paper here. And it was basically recorded on this C chart to count missing data, and then also on this table right here. But as you can see, on day number 6 here, there was a file with 4 missing data points. So what do you need to do now? We now need to determine post-improvement capability. Is this process actually any good? So you can see now they said, okay, for those 20 days, the process capability, basically they said for 800 credit card applications, we had 267 defects. So the Z-score here was 1.9, or basically the number of mistakes per million opportunity, defects per million opportunity was 333,750. Okay, after these improvement ideas, after implementing those improvement ideas, they reduced the number of the number was reduced from 267 to 23. Okay, that means the Z-score now was at 3.4. So 3.4 Z-score, that is almost 95%, as you can see right here. Okay, for 3.4. So in that case now, they now have to go back to the what? They now have to go back to this stage right here. And as you can see, they want to reduce variation by 50% in 6 months. And definitely the objectives of this project have been achieved. This is way more than 50%, as you can see here. You can just say 23 divided by over 265 times 100, and you can see the percentage. So the team was able to gain substantial improvements in terms of reduction in error and to improve the process capability. Now, with a good control plan for one of these process axes, the team's final step is to develop a control chart for this process while to the response time to the customer. And also, again, at this point is to understand that, the idea is basically that, it has to meet the cost and benefit analysis. As I said, the solution should not be more than the problem. Okay. So in this case now, for this bank, this was an acceptable way. Okay. 95% satisfaction rate for them, it was okay. If they wanted to improve from 3.4 to go until to 100%, no problem. All they'll just come back here, and then they are going to look at the second step, at the second critical code parameter, that is number 2 in historically causing issues, and they repeat the process again and again until it reaches 6 sigma. But for them, 95% was good enough, and it is within their range of cost and benefits. Okay? Because at the end of the day, this is a business, so it has to make business case. So how to close out now for the control phase? What you have to do, the first step in the control phase is to validate the measurement system is adequate to measure your critical axes. Those axes that you have determined in the analyze phase and also in the improvement phase, which are historically causing issues or affecting process performance. And then you have to determine if indeed your improvement ideas are they actually adequate to make sure that they are in check. As in the case study, you saw that for 20 days, they collected 40 random files, and basically they just counted the number of X's, the missing information, or the blank spaces on each stage, on each file. After that now, if your critical X's are being controlled, you now have to verify the process improvements, okay? At this point now, you have to measure, the capability. How good is the process now? What are the improvements? What is the new Z-score? What is the new defect per million opportunities, and basically the percentage yield. And then if you meet the goals that you stated in your team, in your project charter, in the defined phase, you now hand off the process to the process owner, now approving those improvement ideas that you determined in the improvement phase. And in this case, they handed over by now the process, they only accept via email. They have to give them a checklist, and they only have to request for 1 year of bank statements. Okay. And then after that, now you develop an implementation strategy for control so that, you can integrate these processes, and then you change how the process works. So you can use mistake proofing or risk management, any other solution, so that, you can keep these root causes in control so that you do not have to fix them again. Okay, so this is now how you identify and address inefficiencies in a process. All right, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your weekend to attend this webinar. I really appreciate it. And please let me know if you have got any questions that you'd like to ask, and I'll be more than happy to address them. Okay, so please make sure that you check your email inbox so that you can see what is the package that you're going to get in this webinar. So as I said, and I think I really have to repeat this very careful here. What you do, this is a promotional offer, okay? So you are going to pay once, and once I mean one time. When you pay one time, okay, you are going to get this, all right? So this is what you're going to get. You are not going to get any, you are not going to have any recurring payments, or you're not going to pay anything individual here. Instead of paying $150, you pay $49 there, you pay anything here, you only have to pay one time. Okay. If you do not understand what I've said, please make sure that you ask our team, and they're going to clarify for you. You only have to pay one time, and then you are also going to be involved in everything that you see on the screen and also on that link. Okay. Now, again, what you're going to get, okay, you are going to get a CPD approved certificate. Okay, you are also going to get 15 case studies and worked out examples. You are also going to get a Six Sigma toolkit, and you're also going to get a training in black belt, and you're also going to get a Six Sigma course bundle, and that is for $65. Okay, so I'm going to copy this again and I'm going to share it to you. Hopefully this is as easy to understand as it can be. All right, again, if nothing makes sense here, just reply to the email you received when you registered for this webinar, and everything is going to be okay for you. For those who have already paid, you should expect to see your digital credentials and also your products, including a recording of this webinar on your student dashboard. If you have paid just now, or you are going to pay within today before the offer ends, you are going to be enrolled after 30 minutes. Okay, so that is it from our side. And also you are going to receive these 2 case studies. We are going to attach them as a link so that you can use them as a practice again and again. And moreover, there is no shortage of these case studies, and also you'll get a recording of this webinar like this. So ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules always to attend these webinars. And okay, and actually some of you are attending these webinars for the second time, the third time, which is actually really impressive for us. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to see what will you get alongside this payment, please just make sure that you click on this link, and then everything is going to be okay. Okay, so thank you so much for attending the webinar. And if you have got any questions, please just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, right.